AC Milk.
Yes.
I came across a pretty funny phrase. I didn't make this up myself, but you know, like we talk about high-tech industries in, you know, Silicon Valley or whatever. Careful, we got someone who's trying to pass us here.
Yep.
In China, you can describe them as having a Heist Tech industry.
Heist Tech.
And if my mind work backwards just for a minute.
Let me put it to you this way.
Data.
It's time you should know, so we'll tell you about our
Data.
and where it must go. Our
Data.
Oh no, now I did it.
So tell me, Mom, I want to know, where does all our
Data.
Our
Data.
It's a balancing act, balance
Internet security.
with the
VPN.
we must, and that's a fact, Jack.
Data.
Data. Internet security and privacy are a huge concern for us at ADV China, but it should also be a concern for you too. Nowadays, more than ever, hacks and identity theft is very commonplace, and using a VPN can keep your data safe. Think of a VPN like a secure tunnel, so everything that comes in and out of your computer in terms of your data is encrypted and secure. The VPN we choose to use is NordVPN. NordVPN is super easy to use. You can hop around servers all around the world, and there's a ton of servers that you can choose from. You can also use NordVPN to unblock region-locked content, so maybe something that you want to watch is only available in a certain country. Well, hop over to that country on the VPN and you'll be able to watch it. Don't forget to go to nordvpn.com/ADVchina and you'll get 68% off of a 2-year plan plus 4 months free if you use the code ADVChina. You'll be keeping your internet safe and also supporting the channel. Thanks.
I'm gonna start this out with, you know, something simple, right?
Okay.
That guy's too impatient. This
I know, jeez.
Lexus guy, but this red, it looks safe. Let's get past the red.
This red guy is too patient.
Yeah.
Is it safe?
You know, there was that whole wind turbine thing where,
Right.
you know, American company developed this wind turbine technology, and you know, China's been implementing wind turbines for years now. Anyway, and they license out the software and the know-how, obviously, for these wind turbines. And you need to have a licensed copy of the software for each one.
Right.
That kind of thing. But they found out that they were wondering, like, why all of a sudden there was no demand and they weren't getting their royalties, they weren't getting paid.
Right.
And it turns out that the Chinese massive wind turbine company had just pirated their software and installed it on all their wind turbines for free.
Right.
You know, and they found out because they sent someone out to like repair something and they found like a pirated copy on the wind turbine. Yeah. So that's one example. But look, basically everything in China, as we all know, has been a knockoff and a copy of something else.
Right.
You know, it all started that way.
Right.
And you could say the same for like Japan back in the day and things like that. But basically,
And Taiwan.
Yeah, and Taiwan. All of these Xiaomi and whatever you want to call them, all these you know, Huawei and the big cell phone manufacturers, they basically just copied all of Apple's technology or Samsung or whoever has factories here.
Right.
Because, you know, they use underhanded means. They either bribe or they have someone in the factory who steals the secrets, or
On
you
the
know,
inside, yeah.
and they, of course, they know all the suppliers, and some of them are the suppliers themselves, so they get all the build sheets and stuff, and then they go off and make their own thing and kind of improve it, and you know, that kind of nonsense.
I
So-
actually have some insight on that.
Yeah, okay, well, go ahead. What is your insight?
So my friend's TV company, some of her coworkers, right?
Yeah.
They would have, so they would work with to give panels to Samsung and to LG and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? They would make that OEM panels for them under higher quality standards, right? But what would happen is, you know, they have an agreement that they can't release that technology, right? But what the coworkers would do would start their own satellite companies, and they would have their own company. And you'd actually recognize some of the names. I don't want to sell them under, you know, send them under the river, or whatever that phrase is called.
Throw them under the bus.
Throw them under the bus.
Sell them down the river.
Sell them down the river.
Yeah.
But I will say that this does happen quite often. So you're absolutely correct.
Indeedy. And there's this unfortunate situation that happens in China, is that people go there because of the low cost of labor, but also the skills.
Right.
You know, that's something that people overlook a lot, is that Chinese people are very capable. You know, you can train them to do very complicated things, and because they are, you know, by far incredibly. They're very intelligent people.
That's why you'll see like somebody with a 3rd grade education, some woman in a village that can do freaking CAD.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I
Like
mean?
you'll go walk into these, you know, those little photo shops and stuff. You know, where they take passport photos, and there'll be some like old grandpa, and he's using
Doing
Photoshop in
Photoshop.
such a great way. Yeah, just like you said. But yeah, they're very good at technical skills, so soldering and you
Right.
know, all that kind of stuff. So that's why people come to China, is because you've got that skill set. It's not just that labor's cheap, because I promise you, if you went to like the middle of Central Africa or something, you wouldn't be able to find the same skill sets, you know. So that's just the way it is. Anyway, the thing is, people come here, they bring their factories, and they hire staff, and then they train the staff. But unfortunately, the Chinese companies or the managers, etc., will steal all the secrets, steal the way the company works. They will study it, and they will use it, and then they will just kind of start their own company. And the original company that came and set everything up, they'll kind of steal all their clients too, and then, you know, kick them out eventually.
You know what's sad is that a lot of the subscribers that ask us about this,
Yeah.
they'll come to China and be like, well, now you've talked about this before, so now I know what I'm looking out for, and yet they'll end up the victim to this as well. And then they're liable, and they get in trouble back home. It's kind of sucky.
It's really sucky. And
You've seen this with the high-speed rail as well.
Yeah.
China's, you know what's so funny about the high-speed rail? Is that first it was like swept under the rug, like you weren't allowed to report on that, like basically when they stole the technology from Germany.
yeah,
And that whole, you remember that whole scandal, right?
yeah,
And, you know, they brought the maglev technology basically over to Shanghai, and it got so bad that, like, it was talked about too frequently, so China couldn't, like, they couldn't prevent news, you know, Western news media from talking about it. So what they did was just change the history and said that they had it they made it. They invented it. So now the high-speed rail is a Chinese invention, which I found hilarious.
Well, I know now that they're building their own carriages and stuff. You know, I got a friend who's really into this stuff.
Of course,
and
of course.
these days, like, they're doing the right thing eventually. But you know, of
Yeah,
course,
but they started, like, they couldn't even make a ballpoint pen.
yeah, until recently, that's true. That's the thing. That's how China operates, and unfortunately, people lose a lot of money to this and they lose all their skills and stuff. You have to be careful when you're dealing with China, because
Right.
us as foreigners here in China, they also use us up. They use our skills until they know everything that we know, and then we're
Right.
not useful anymore. Then it's like, oh, you know, we don't need foreigners anymore in that field, so you're not allowed to get a visa anymore, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So that is this whole heist technology thing. Anyway, you wanted to add something to this, didn't you?
A lot of Chinese companies, we're talking about loss of money, right? A lot of Chinese companies, this is another rare and, again, a very scary thing for the Chinese leadership, is there's a lot of high profit margin companies that are very powerful in China that are now losing a shit ton of money because of the way that the current leadership of China has dealt with the tariff and trade war with Trump in the U.S. So they're basically calling him pig-headed and saying that, and you don't say that about the leader of China, right? They're calling him pig-headed and too nationalistic and using the party's rhetoric and pride, fake propaganda to ruin what could have been a decent, a decent resolution to this problem.
Yeah.
And he's, basically the negative opinion about it is that Xi Jinping used his own pride to kind of like show China to the rest of the world that they're strong and they can deal with this, instead of actually, you know, like helping these companies out that are, you know, in negative growth now. So I thought that was really interesting because you never hear that. Like,
No, true.
There's not usually vocal criticism, and there's more and more criticism of the current leadership. Since I moved to China, I never heard that before. It's pretty crazy.
It's weird. You know, talking about the trade war, you know, ZTE, or you probably say ZTE.
Yeah. I wouldn't say anything because it's a shit company.
No, man, they make some pretty interesting telecommunication stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing is,
spy on you.
ZTE, you know, basically they lied. You know, they sold American chips and stuff to Iran or whatever, and so America was like, what the hell, like, you're not allowed to do that, because part of the agreement of selling you chips and whatever is that you're not allowed to do that. But they sold them anyway, and then when they were caught out, you know, basically the requirements were that they must fire or punish the people that sold the stuff to Iran, right? And then months later or a year later, whatever, it turns out that they hadn't punished them and they were still selling stuff to Iran. so that's why America basically said, you know what, screw you, we're not selling our chips, whatever
That's how
they
this
were.
all started, right?
Yeah, we're not going to be selling our chips to you anymore because you're putting them in the hands of our enemies and they're going to use it for their bloody nuclear weapons and stuff and whatever. You know,
And China said, I don't care, we'll just have Doritos instead.
Anyway, the thing is,
Sorry.
it basically caused ZTE to almost go bankrupt because they relied so heavily on the CPUs that they were buying from.
Right.
I don't know if it's Qualcomm or one of those American companies, right?
Right. That's correct.
But this has also had another effect, a very chilling effect on this whole thing. Because, you know, I've got a friend who's an electronics engineer.
Yeah.
He has a lot of faith in Chinese engineers and stuff because he deals with them all the time. He knows that they're incredibly capable.
Right.
And he's very, you know, his wife's, you know, sources parts for electronics and stuff. He's really tied into the whole game. So he was telling me how immediately after that ZTE thing happened, all Chinese manufacturers are now basically engineering any American parts out of their products. So, you know, like they have their build sheets and their, you know, whatever, the schematics and stuff. They will now not use any American parts. They're shifting over to Korean stuff, you know, Samsung, LG, all that kind of thing. And they're developing their own. Because remember, China's incredibly good at reverse engineering stuff.
Right.
So they're making their own stuff. They're not very good at creating new technology, but they're very good at taking existing technology and copying it.
Right.
And making it better. That's one thing that they do is they do make things better.
Give me an example.
Okay. For example, something like a microcontroller, right?
Okay.
Microcontrollers that you can buy from America, you know, something you can use in little electronics and stuff. If you buy the Chinese-made one, not only does it cost a fraction of the price, they fix the bugs in it. Like, you know, the bugs with certain RAM address codes and things in some of those they fix them. And they add more RAM and they just make them more capable. You know, things like that is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
When you're
I
talking
gotcha.
about like these component level things, I have seen how Chinese engineers have actually fixed component level electronics and made them better.
Interesting.
Because the thing is, they didn't have to put in all the money and time into the R&D. So they can take it and then they can use what they've learned and they can just fix it. And unlike in America where you probably have to apply for patent code 12.789 and pay this license fee to that company and all that, they don't have to. They just do it, you know. They're like, okay, we can just do it. So they do it.
Right.
So they do make things better. I've seen it. It's pretty impressive. So that whole thing had a bit of an opposite effect because it did teach them a lesson that they can't do that kind of thing, but at the same time it really spurred them on to just go ahead and start making their own stuff and stop relying on American parts. So, you know, that's what I wanted to add to that whole thing.
That's interesting. Good aside. Nice. Well, I learned a lot today.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic, and there's all sides to this, but at the end of the day, we do know that there are a lot of deceptive business practices in China, and at the end of the day, you know, it will always be China versus the world. It'll never be like China working together with the world, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's very rare.
And so that's in business too, you know.
Right.
So they'll steal what they can, or they'll learn what they can, and then move on. Anyway, anything you would like to tell our subscribers before we sign off?
Whether you're a heister, a shyster, or a loyal subscriber, we appreciate you watching our vids. Please click subscribe if you haven't already so you can see our future stuff. And today's comment down below, why don't you tell us in the comments section if you have ever dealt in business or technology with Chinese people, or do you use Chinese products in your daily life? Because I have a topic we'll probably talk about in the future, and I might use some of your answers for that. So thank you very much.
Yeah. And whether or not, I mean, we all do have to recognize that Chinese electronics and stuff have been improving drastically, you know.
Right.
And there are Chinese companies like DJI and stuff which make amazing products.
Right.
Even if most of the R&D and stuff comes from other outside sources, and they have they basically hire international engineers and stuff to make this stuff. Either way, it doesn't matter. Whether you have a lot of confidence in Chinese tech or not, or whether you think your ZTE router is spying on you or not, because you know, like, there's a bit of tinfoil hatness to that whole,
Sure.
thing. We love you all the same. So until next time, you know the drill. As always, stay awesome. ADV China every Monday, same time, same place. Wednesdays, Lao 86, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, on Friday, just in time for a beer, Serpents at 8.